Okay, so welcome to the show. This is the part where we just talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing, how the show's going to run, and we'll go forward with how everything's going to work through the show. So the first thing that's going to happen is Matt, my producer, is going to come on the show, and he's going to do a sound check with you as well as with me, make sure we sound appropriately unechoey and all that good stuff.
Okay.
And then he'll kind of then he'll start the radio show with a commercial, and then we'll go live.
Awesome.
So what I'll do once we go live, I'm going to introduce you. I'm going to read your bio, which I have in front of me. I'm going to introduce the topic, the description of what we're going to talk about, and then I'm going to start asking you questions. So I have the questions that you gave me, but I'm going to venture off a little bit as we start talking. I have the questions for the reason of getting us started, just to make sure we don't like hit a roadblock where we don't really have anything to say to each other. So it's just kind of leads the conversation.
Cool.
Sometimes I just ask the questions in order. Sometimes I move them around, but I want the conversation to flow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm an open book. Open book. Okay. So go ahead and go like wherever you want to with it. I'm a little tangential too, so it might just veer.
Okay. I try not to surprise people because I personally do not like surprises, especially live on the radio. It's a little unnerving. But if you're okay with that, we'll just go. If we get to a point where you are uncomfortable or you don't feel like it's a topic you want to talk about, or maybe it's too in depth of a topic or whatever the reason may be, you can just say, you know what, let's save that for another conversation.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a conversation we should talk about, next time or whatever. Just kind of like, let's just move it along. And then we'll go to the next topic. One of the last questions that I usually ask everybody is, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Okay.
So I want you to think about that. And then, one of the things that's important to remember when you're live on the radio is to make sure you face forward. That's also good for the visual portion as well. But I'm not sure how your audio is picking up your voice. So you want to face forward. Make sure that you're not moving around papers. Make sure that you're not writing on the desk, as your microphone will pick that up.
Got it.
So try not to move your hands a lot. If you talk a lot with your hands, sometimes it interferes with the sound. Go figure that one out. Well, sound travels, so it's moving the vibrations. So so we have about probably 8-9 minutes before Matt comes on. I like to use that time just to kind of like get comfortable with the conversation. So how was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. I have 2 sisters and one of them lives in Florida. So the whole family converged down there for a little bit. And
which part of Florida?
Tampa.
Okay. Very nice.
Yeah. So got to be out in the water at the beach, which was so lovely.
Did you go down to St. Pete or?
Yes.
Okay. I used to live there.
Oh, no way.
Briefly, but yes.
There was Shopapalooza going on and like Saturday market. And so my sister took us to the Saturday market and I was like, oh, this must be Shopapalooza, like where they have all the holiday vendors out. And she was like, no, this is just a regular Saturday. I was like, there's a band, there's holiday tents.
Beautiful.
So that was amazing. And then going down to the pier, there was more shops. I'm like, oh, this must be Shopapalooza. And she's like, nope, this is just the regular holiday vendors.
Sorry, my camera I hit the button accidentally. My apologies.
Okay.
I loved St. Pete because I actually still own land in Clearwater, which is just a little bit north of St. Pete. But one of the first things I noticed when we went down there, we went to the marina, and there's like just
so beautiful.
Everything's just hopping, there's people there, and they're having picnics, and they're going on boat rides, and they're going sailing, and it's just always moving. It's just a really nice energy.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And
such a cool spot.
It is really cool. Yeah, definitely. So you all got together in in Florida and had a great time.
Yes. And my parents are usually like huge cooks. And this year, everyone kind of made their own dish. And it was probably the best Thanksgiving food. We actually skipped the turkey. We did steak instead because I don't know. I feel like the turkey usually gets left out at our house.
What's funny? I'm not a fan of turkey. I don't like it. So we usually roast a chicken and then we'll make like a thing of salmon. One year we barbecued. We try to do something different every year. We'll keep like the sides very similar, but not the same, but similar. Like we'll have a potato dish, but it might be cooked differently every year, or we'll have, different veggies. But we try to do something different every year. When I was married and I had my in-laws and my whole family, we'd have probably sometimes 30 to 50 people at our house.
Amazing.
And so I would just do like a salmon in the oven. One year I grilled Greek. It was beef and lamb rolled up with Greek spices. And I grilled it slowly on the grill. So it like took hours for it to cook. And it was just, it was really fun. It was really a lot of fun to, because we'd have food throughout the 2-3 hours, we'd be like, okay, the salmon's ready. Anyone who wants that. And because you can't fit 30, 40 people on a table. So we kind of had it more buffet style. It was a lot of fun.
I love that. I mean, the point is that we're all together. So, whatever the meal is, so be it.
Agreed. Yeah. That's wonderful. And I love the travel aspect of it too. Like you get to go somewhere new. Thanksgiving, in my opinion, is about spending time with family and feeling grateful. And
Truly.
When you go somewhere new, it's like, it gives you a new perspective on life and you come back feeling kind of refreshed and even more grateful. It's like, okay, I have a really good life. I get to travel. I get to have time with my family. I get to see my friends. I get to relax. It's like, there's all these things to be grateful for.
Absolutely. There's a different appreciation when you're looking at everything through that vacation lens, through that, like, haven't seen this at this angle. Out of your routine. And if you get to host, I love having family over because not a lot of family lives in Arizona. Getting to show off where I live and the different parts that I love, or bringing them to my favorite parts. And that definitely adds that appreciation and gratitude into the trip.
Yeah, I think you're right. Any place you go, there's going to be fun things to do or interesting things to see. In Florida, you get to see a whole new lifestyle. It's very different than Arizona.
It's so funny how like my sister was taking us to some places and I'm like, well, how often do you come here? This is amazing. And she's like, I actually only bring guests here. Like you don't realize, like, being a tourist in your own backyard kind of thing. And you're like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, I have to say that's one thing about Arizona when I lived there, because I lived in Arizona for 37 years and I did not wait for people to come visit me. I was out doing things all the time.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that, my family was really good about, is like every weekend, it's like, okay, what's new? What are we going to see today? What are we going to do today?
Yeah.
Maybe we drive somewhere. Maybe we go see the Petrified Forest. Maybe we go see the Grand Canyon. So I can say after 37 years, I know Arizona very, very well. I know California very, very well. Nevada pretty well. And we did a lot of traveling and it was a lot of fun.
I love that. I did that when I was growing up too. And my parents live in New York. And so I'll call them up and I'm like, oh, what are you guys up to this weekend? And they're like, oh, we're going to go down to DC because it's only, how many hours from there? Like we're going to pop up to
2-3 hours.
It's like 5, but my mom loves to drive. So
okay.
She'll like,
DC's like 2.5 hours from where I live.
Oh, nice. So that's
but if you go during traffic, it's 5.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Just map that out, but
yeah. So you're like, if you get stuck in traffic, it's 5. If not, 2.5.
Exactly. There's always something to do.
Yeah. All right. Matt just joined us. Cool. One other thing I forgot to tell you, he's going to put in the chat 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 30 seconds. So when we get to around the 2-minute mark is when we'll take our break. Hi, Matt. Oh, he's not ready yet. Hi, Matt.
Hi, good morning. How you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Doing well.
I want to introduce you to Treisha.
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 Yeah.
This is my producer, Matt. I'm glad I
Hello.
asked you that.
Perfect timing.
Yes.
Good morning, Treisha. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. I just want to do some mic checks here. We'll get some level checks. Treisha, just do me a favor and just count backwards from 5 for me.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year.
All right. I may have you turn that up just in a moment here. Fozzie, go ahead and count back from 5.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Yeah. Treisha, do me a favor and we'll just go into the Zoom settings. We'll see if we can turn up the mic volume just a little bit.
Okay.
Down in the bottom left corner, next to the mute button is a little arrow, like an up arrow caret. Click right on the arrow.
Okay.
Right. And then at the bottom, click audio settings.
Okay.
All right. So in the audio settings, you'll see right around the center of the window where it says test mic.
Okay.
All right. So just below that, a couple lines down, there's a box that says automatically adjust microphone volume. Go ahead and deselect that if it's selected.
Okay.
All right. And then right below test mic is kind of the blue volume slide bar. Where would you say percentage wise it's at right now?
It's at 100 now.
Where at?
It's at all the way on the right side.
It's all the way to the right.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and click back on to the automatically adjust microphone volume.
Okay. Turn it back on.
That'll hopefully raise you up a little bit, but just know it's not coming through very loud. You may have to, just kind of project and talk a little louder, like you're talking to somebody in the room versus, talking to the computer.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. And Fozzie, I did send a hello over. Did that come in on the chat?
I got it. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. All right,
Yes.
perfect. Then we are good to go. We still have about a minute and a half till we get started.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
Awesome.
All right. So just remember, we're going live. So if you cough or sneeze, hit the mute button. And yeah, we're getting ready to go. So
Sounds good.
you excited?
Yes, I am excited. Get to talk
Okay.
about all the things.
So when we start, I'm going to give your bio, and then I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit more about you and your practice a little bit. And then we'll go into the questions.
Okay.
All right. I'll send you the feed here in about 20 seconds. We'll get started. Have a great
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Sorry, I live in an old house and my floor is not level. So every time I turn, I find myself just sliding.
Management.
Welcome to Focus on Success with Fozzie Acosti. Our program is designed to help you with executive function challenges. Our guest experts offer perspective, experience, and ideas to improve different aspects of your life. Now, here is your host, Fozzie Acosti.
Hi, welcome. I'm Fozzie Acosti, and today we are speaking with Treisha Wan. Treisha is a speech language pathologist and owner of Illuminate Family Workshop, a private practice in Phoenix, Arizona. She believes in highlighting a student's strengths and honoring their needs. After working in the public elementary schools, she decided to create her own practice to work with students who are often missed due to specific eligibility criteria. In her practice, she boosts language skills in her late talking preschoolers and coaches families on how to incorporate AAC devices to provide nonverbal students access to robust language systems. Many of her clients are elementary age students with ADHD who need tools to support reading comprehension, energy regulation, and executive function. She's a dog mom to 2, fan of the Phoenix Suns, and recently has been in the process of seeking an official diagnosis of ADHD. So today we're going to talk about speech therapy and why we need a speech therapist. So welcome to the show, Treisha.
Hello, I am so excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you do is phenomenal. I think what you do is very important. My younger daughter needed speech therapy when she was younger, and I just know what a difference it made in our lives. So I know what you do is very important. So thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for being on the show today. So let's talk a little bit about you. Is there anything that you'd like to, talk to us about? Like, how did you get started? Why did you get started in this field? What made this your thing?
Yeah. So I chose this field back in like 2013, sophomore year in college. And I don't even think I really knew what I was walking into. I just knew that I wanted to help people. And I loved the blend that therapy gives with the creativity that you get to infuse into your sessions and the relationship building that you get to have with the clients, with their families. I loved the full range of flexibility with the career and getting to work with kids or adults, or, I knew it was a field that I would always be learning in and I would never get bored of, because there's just so much that is involved and the scope is so large. And I also loved the science back of it, where I got to learn about neuroanatomy and how your brain works, and using all of the sciencey kind of skills to support kids and blend those two parts of your brain together, So after choosing that, I was like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in college and throughout grad school. And I was like, whoa, I get to do that. I get to be a part of someone's life at the most pivotal moments, and be that person who gets to say, yeah, I know it's challenging, but this is something that we're going to build resilience with, and we're going to celebrate the wins along the way, and be that person for a family and just contribute to the conversation. Because, being in that useful reality where things aren't rainbows and unicorns when you're, seeing a speech language pathologist, there's a reason behind that, but it's also not doom and gloom. So kind of being in that middle there, and through relationship building is where that keeps me in the field. And that's my favorite part. And speech therapy being that blend, being the vehicle for that, and getting to nerd out on all things communication, all things language, and getting my aha moments as well has been a ton of fun. And where I get to, people ask, like, what are your hobbies? And I'm like, I love to just like look up different tools that other people are creating, or checking out their research, or just getting to hear about other passionate professionals in the field, hear about like how they're able to support our kiddos.
Well, I love the passion that you have for what you do. And it definitely shows when you're speaking, because you get very bright-eyed and and you're very animated. So I love that. Tell us a little bit about why someone would come see you. What diagnosis do they have to have, or do they even have to have a diagnosis to come search for you?
So in the schools, everything is through the academic lens. So when I was first working in the schools, we would get referrals for students who were not meeting those academic benchmarks. They were struggling in the classroom. And so I would be part of a whole special education team that looks at what kind of supports do we need to put into place for a student to have access to the curriculum, to make the gains that their peers are also making. Does it mean that we incorporate other accommodations, or does that mean that they need to spend a couple, a certain amount of minutes outside of their classroom to work on those specific skills? So it's all through the academic lens. In the private practice setting, this looks like it looks a little different, because I don't have those criteria set. It looks like working with students with ADHD or dyslexia that may not meet criteria for that academic. So like, it's a student who is, maybe they're getting those A's and B's, but they're really struggling with that executive functioning piece. With parents are noticing, like, we're spending hours on homework, or like that's a really a place where it's really resistant, or they're just kind of they're flying under the radar because they're doing okay, but they're not really. But if you really look at through this analytical lens at how there's really some gaps in their strategies.
Yes.
So that is where I come in with private practice. And because of my background in the schools, I have a picture of what's going on if they are already seeing a speech therapist in the schools and how they have that academic lens. But there are a lot of areas that I was kind of, when I worked in the schools, not able to touch upon because it didn't fall under the category of an academic goal. So executive functioning, while that underlies, everything that they do at school, I couldn't write really a goal for that because was it really related to math or writing? That's where, the private practice, we can work on things that we couldn't necessarily work on in the schools. So this might look like the articulation, which is, everyone kind of thinks about first when they're talking about speech sounds and that,
right.
that tricky R sound, but it also could look like reading comprehension. Is your student, it's possible for a student to be reading fluently, they can decode the words on the page, but you ask them like, who was in your story? And they have no idea what happened. Or, they're just reading it, but it's not actually building that visual picture in their brain. So it's really challenging for them to answer any type of reading comprehension question that isn't directly from the text. So if you ask a student, like, what was the story about? They'll tell you word for word. They'll look back at the text and read you the whole story again. But that isn't necessarily, which, for some, at some grade levels, you're like, okay, sure, that they kind of got it. But at other grade levels, the stakes kind of get higher as you go up in grades, and they need you to really synthesize and analyze that information. And our students are not necessarily able to do that. And, it may not be that they are either able to do the math computations, but it's the word problems that they're not really able to grasp all of the vocabulary that's involved in their math studies that allows for them to even get to the computation part. So that's where speech therapy pops in to work on those vocabulary skills and those, understanding the sentence structures that, the word before and the conjugations and the conjunctions really impact their comprehension.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's really amazing because I think a lot of people, when they think of a speech therapist, they think you're just helping me learn to pronounce words, but we all know it's more than that. And so now that you've explained that, I think other people understand it's a lot more than just helping you understand how to pronounce a word. That's wonderful. Why would somebody need an evaluation?
Yeah.
Or do they even need an evaluation before they come see you?
I believe that evaluations really give us a snapshot and a window into how the student is processing information and able to express themselves. So in the schools, you would get an evaluation as part of a multidisciplinary team approach to kind of gather that picture and in order to qualify for services. In the private practice setting, it may look a little bit different. So we are going in depth into how are they processing their vocabulary skills? What do their skills look like compared to their same age peers? What kind of supports can we put into place to promote and encourage progress? And what does their team need to know about that student? So we're not only looking at I'm not only looking at what their language skills are or their articulation skills are, or I'm also looking at, what is their sense, in real time, are they a student who's a little bit more wiggly? Do we need to add in accommodations for, where and how they do their studies? Are they standing at a desk? Are they on a bouncy ball? Things like that. What type of environment do we need to set up so this child is successful? An evaluation would really also look at, if we are looking at speech sounds, or what does their oral motor musculature look like? Does that support all of for them to produce sounds? Is there something structural that we need to look at? And also, like, what is the intersection? If the student already has a diagnosis of maybe dyslexia, or they have characteristics of ADHD that maybe they're not seeking an official diagnosis, but we know that that's we want to look at them through this lens. How does that intersect? And, what does the research show about ADHD and language development that we need to look at through this lens? And it just gives us that snapshot of where they're at right now. And it also is a really great point for us to look at their progress later on down the road.
Right. Want to get that benchmark. So how long does an evaluation typically take? And do you do those yourself? Or do you okay.
Yeah, so I do them myself, and because they have that background in the school, I kind of have formatted it in the way of the way it would work in the schools too, but just with my own flavor here. So we'll start to build the relationship with the student with an initial screening. So just kind of getting to hear about the student, where they're at, why are they coming to me? What are some things that they want to know more about? And, it'll look like us either playing a game together, having a conversation, just really easy, low pressure. And then we'll set up a second meeting, which will be about an hour, maybe 2. It really depends if we need to split it up on the personality of the student, if maybe they're a little, and maybe we need to, for attention span wise and engagement level, or even just how they're feeling that day. Did they sleep good last night? Like, what have they eaten a snack today? So it could look like breaking that up into two days or 2 segments of time. And it looks like administering some standardized assessments, and that is in a really structured way. So I need to have the relationship with them first in order to kind of get them, or for us to do some challenging things, because some of it may be easy, some of it may be hard. So to have them have that persistence throughout. So it looks like them answering some questions, looking at some pictures, retelling me some stories. I'll also include some dynamic testing. So that looks like, testing a kiddo in a specific skill, teaching them how to do it, and then testing them again. So are they able to pick up that skill in that short amount of time? And what kind of prompts and cues, what kind of scaffolding do I need to provide in order for them to achieve that skill? So it kind of is like a snapshot into, okay, what is therapy actually going to look like for this kiddo? And then that gives me data for the evaluation report. So I can give that to teachers, to other professionals that they're working with. And I'm saying, hey, when you, if you're working on something that involves following directions, make sure that your kiddo is looking at you, that, maybe you want to have them write it down. Maybe you're writing it down. Maybe a visual schedule is what really supports them. Maybe, what are some things that we can do so we have tangible, actionable items in their evaluation. And so after we complete that, I'll formulate that into a big old report, and that'll include their background information, their birth history, milestones, any other information from other professionals that they may be working with, some questionnaires from parents. If they're an older student, like a later elementary, I'm talking about our middle school students, I might even include their input too, because they're a part of the team as well. So what are their views on speech therapy? What is their attitude towards it? Are they also noticing the same things that their parents are noticing with their struggle? Or are they saying like, I'm fine? Or, or they're like, is there resistance there? Or are they like, you know what, I am actually really struggling and I need help, and this is not fun for me, school, I'm this, that, and the other thing. So they also include that part. So after that evaluation report is all written up, I'll meet with parents, and they're allowed to invite anybody else that's on their team. That could look like, the teachers or support specialists that are at their school, or maybe they work with an OT and a PT. We'll all come together for a team huddle, and we'll go over the report. I also don't like to give like this big old 8-page report to parents with some really harsh language that's in there. Not harsh meaning, but it's just written in a way so you could give it to a pediatrician, and they could use it for other purposes as well. So no one wants to get this report and kind of get and wonder what
and not be able to read it.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go over what that looks like. I'll go through each of the sections and kind of talk them through my thought process and make sure that it's all aligned with what they're seeing at home. So it's a true representation on their personality, their strengths, and their needs. And if there's something that comes up, which inevitably does when we're chatting all together, make sure we include that in the report so we can edit it in real time. Or, some corrections like, oh, maybe that wasn't a concern,
Right.
So we'll just kind of edit that through. And then after that is when we'll have already the bulk of the work on what our game plan will be. And that outlines our therapy goals, our plan moving forward, when we're going to have some check-in points, and how we're going to be communicating. Is it going to be through session notes? Is it going to be, a biweekly phone call if I'm seeing them without the parent at that. Maybe I'm seeing them at a school or something like that, or maybe they're with babysitter or something. So making sure we have that communication system already in place.
Right. No, I love that you have a very thorough plan. I was writing your steps down as you were talking. I thought, yeah, that's very thorough. So I was hoping to have a question in there somewhere. But no, that's very thorough. I love it. So when families figure out they have a need and they need this evaluation, how can they prepare their child for this evaluation? How many hours does this evaluation take overall? You said, I know you said 2 sessions, but how many hours would that be?
Ooh, okay. It kind of depends on the kiddo and what we're analyzing. So if we are doing like an articulation evaluation, that's going to look like maybe a half hour, just kind of get to know you, build a relationship, and then like another hour time together. If we're looking at, and then another, I like to block out like 45 minutes, an hour for the team to come together. That'll be longer into 3, say that like the screening, maybe still a half hour, maybe gather some information. If we're looking at a student who are analyzing their verbal, expressive and receptive language, and their writing and their reading, consider it's going to be like around 3 or 4 hours.
Wow. Okay. So how can a parent prepare their student or child for this evaluation? What do they need to tell the child? What do they need? Are there things that they need to do before they come into your office?
Yeah. So logistically, some of the like actual items here are, you're going to be filling out a birth history and milestones. So just kind of think back at, okay, were they talking at, a year to 18 months? Were they like, what are, just kind of maybe go through back your pictures and, your scrapbook.
Right.
And when did they meet those milestones? Was I concerned about anything at that point? When did those concerns start? Or even not concerns, let's use the word curiosities about how they're doing. And then I would also have a conversation with the kiddo. Sometimes parents will say like, oh, I'm just gonna let them know that you're a friend and you're gonna talk to them, which is kind of okay for one part. But the other part is like, a kiddo will remember that in the future, most likely, and they'll be like, what was that? So bringing
what kind of friends do my parents have?
And why are they talking to me so much? Like, why do they need to know?
They're so interested in me and not my parents. That's really weird.
Exactly. They're like, can I go play on the iPad now? Like, I'm kind of done. So what I like to tell them is that, we're going to look at some pictures, play some games, and I'm going to look to see how your brain, works, and how, let them know about that there are different parts of your brain and they all work together in this kind of way. And to get that buy-in from them that we're going to be going through this process, and let them know some things are going to be easy, some things are going to be tricky, but all you have to do is try your best. And, for the family too, to prepare that no matter what's on that piece of paper afterwards, they're still the same kiddo that they were before you started this whole process. And it's just another little clue on ways to, and just another angle and lens that we can use to appreciate the kiddo, just to appreciate them the way they are and who they are.
I like your approach. I like telling kids the truth because, well, they're going to remember it, first of all. And second of all, when the next opportunity comes up for them to go see somebody, is this another quote unquote friend? And then they start having trust issues with their parents. And that's not a good thing either, because they need that support system. So
I like to not make it so serious either. Like, it's not like you're gonna go to the, see this person, dun, dun, dun. So I hope that we have a little bit of fun, and, I need them to be more relaxed in themselves throughout the process too, to get like, constantly you're thinking about like, oh, what is this person gonna think? It's gonna be a little bit more challenging. You may not perform the best, and it might not give us the most accurate snapshot, which is why that relationship building piece is going to be most important in our process.
Absolutely. What are some trends that you're seeing currently with clients who have ADHD?
So what I'm noticing is that parents are more familiar today than they were before about the different profiles and ways that ADHD characteristics can present themselves in their kiddos.
Okay.
So a lot of families that are wondering like, is this ADHD? You know, our general picture that we've had for a lot of years is like the second grade boy who's just like super hyperactive and bouncing off the walls. But this profile has really changed throughout everyone having conversations and more voices contributing to the conversation. And so families are either looking at their kiddo through the suspected lens of ADHD, or they're seeking out this official diagnosis. However, after that, we kind of hit this wall and we're not really sure what that means for that kiddo and that family. So does it look like a family kind of approaching this in a, well, they can't do that, they have ADHD? Or does it look like them saying like, you know, the kid has the language like, I have ADHD, but they don't really know like that it's also a superpower. And that if you know, there are things that we need to work with, but also there's a lot of amazing things that come from that. You know, there's a paper out, right? Gosh, I have to give it to you to put in the show notes, that describes how ADHD, the flip side of that, is a creative personality.
Yes.
So, you know, looking at that through that lens, the conversation doesn't stop at, okay, they have ADHD and we're just going to put that on all the papers and, you know, that's it, because everyone is an individual and it is so different for each person.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. How can speech therapy support reading comprehension?
Okay. So, reading comprehension, gosh, there are so many different little facets of reading comprehension here.
Yeah.
So there is the vocabulary development piece, and there's also the story structure piece. So I'll go with the story structure piece for now. Have you ever talked to like a first grader or a second grader, and they're trying to tell you a story about their favorite movie?
Of course.
And they are, if you didn't know the movie, you would be like, what are you talking about? Where is this coming from? They're describing these parts in like ultra detail, or they're describing it in like such a broad overview. You're like not even getting character names or setting or context. They're just like jumping right down to the middle.
Right. They're telling you the parts they remember.
Yes.
The parts that made the biggest impact on them, not necessarily the story.
Which is so great if they're just telling you a story about the movie. But if we're getting into the reading comprehension part, where that's necessary for, you know, academic work,
that's a whole different story.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So what I like to do support reading comprehension is to give them the structure on what to anticipate when they're reading like a narrative piece. There's going to be characters. There's going to be the setting. There's going to be a kickoff event. There's going to be a couple other events following that. Solution. We're going to pay attention to the characters' feelings and how those change throughout. And so giving them the structure of that and a visual and different types of graphic organizers really help them when they're reading something, plop in the information into those spots. And if they're missing some of those, has them pay attention to what they're paying attention to. It's kind of like mindful reading when they have the structure and the pattern to put those into. And then on the flip side of that, that'll help them retell a story or tell their own story or create their own stories or express themselves in a way that's going to make sense to other people.
And make sense to them. I mean, sometimes they don't even fully understand what they're reading. So that helps them better understand what they're reading, which is pretty important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I love it. Okay. So we have about 3 minutes before we go to break. I would like to just touch on one more topic, and then if you could just share your information, that would be fantastic. Cool. What are your favorite ways to support vocabulary development?
Ooh, okay. So vocabulary development. I love
this is important as kids are learning new words constantly, you know.
Absolutely.
Dreaded weekly spelling tests.
Oh my gosh, yes. And like the flashcard system, which truly, it works in some ways, but it really,
I'm not a fan of the flashcards.
Does a disservice for us. I mean, oh my gosh, do you remember like getting ready for the SATs and you'd buy like, what is it? The Barron's giant flashcard deck. And like that was just a giant paperweight.
Yeah.
No one used
not
those.
not worth it.
Absolutely. So what I like to do is think about words as a spider web and think about how, and once again, some structure words. It's called semantic feature analysis. And you can do this with nouns, verbs, adjectives, any type of word type. And think about the different parts. So if we were describing, a pen, what does it do? What does it look like? What category does it belong in? So all different features of that. And then it kind of builds this like word association spider web.
Right.
Visual.
I love it.
Vocabulary.
I love it. That is a fantastic tip. Thank you very much for sharing that. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
You can visit my website. It's at illuminatefamilyworkshop.com. You can also find me on Instagram, or if you just type in Illuminate Family Workshop on YouTube, you'll get some content there and it's got some contact information.
Thank you so much. If you're looking to get in touch with me, you can go to my website, executivefunctioncoachaz.com, and you can subscribe to our magazine, which our next issue comes out January 10th. And we have some really big news about the magazine. We have been really successful this past year. And so we have decided to change our format to a monthly magazine as opposed to a quarterly magazine. So if you would like to get a copy of the magazine, make sure you subscribe. You're going to get an email once you put your information into our website. Make sure you click on that email that you get, because that's what's going to confirm your subscription. If you don't do that, you will not get a copy of the magazine. We have quite a few people that have subscribed to the magazine, but we can't send them a copy because it keeps getting bounced back because they didn't click on that email. So make sure you click on that. If you are interested in our mind print assessment, which is a new product that we are offering, we have a special going right now. So it's $50 off. Just give me a call and we can schedule it. So it's $350 normally. Right now we're offering it $300 with the $50 off. You can call me at 480-648-1122, or you can email me at fazia@executivefunctioncoachaz.com. We'd be happy to schedule that for you. And then that comes with a consultation as well, a 45-minute consultation. We want to thank all our listeners. Without you, this would not be possible. And we'll be back after these messages.
Okay, excellent job. All clear. Back in a couple minutes.
Thank you, Matt.
Hi.
All right, Treisha.
How do you?
I'm sorry.
I said I'm sweating a little bit here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I make you work too hard?
No, I'm just really excited. So.
Oh, good. No, this has been fun. So we did talk about that. I want to come back and talk a little bit about ways to support story grammar, and then we'll go into the other questions that you have.
Okay.
No, this is perfect timing. You're giving a lot of great information, and I thank you for that, because one of the reasons I do this is so that people can get enough information that they can make a good decision. Well-informed decision is important, and not all parents understand what they need to do. We can't all be an expert in every area. So,
right. That's so important.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give I think it's helpful to hear the tangible, the actual things, what it's going to look like.
Right. Like if I have a child who has a speech problem, how do I find somebody that's going to help me? And once I find that person, what's it going to look like when I'm working with them? What do I need to do? What's my part in this? You're kind of stuck as a parent. Like when my daughter went through speech therapy at her school, I had a lot of questions. So it's very helpful to have that information.
Absolutely. And to know that the team also finds value in you asking those questions. But it is.
I have to tell you a really funny story real quick. When my daughter was in preschool, this is before she had speech therapy. She loves theater, and this is when Lilo and Stitch was really big. And so she went to school every day in character. I did not know this. And so 2-3 weeks into school, I get a call from the teacher, and they're like, we need to have a conversation. They bring in everybody, the principal, the vice principal. I mean, this whole room is filled with people. And I'm like starting to think, what did my kid do?
Yeah.
And they're like, we're not really sure if you're aware of this, or if you are, we think that maybe you're just not like paying attention. Like they think I'm a complete like idiot, right? and they're like, your daughter comes to school and she's sitting next to me at this time. She's sitting next to me because she was like 3-4 years old.
Yeah.
And they're like, describing what she's doing. And I'm like, I looked at her and I said, are you doing the Lilo and Stitch thing at school? And she's like, yeah. And I said, can you speak normally in class? She's like, yeah. I said, can you talk normally now? She goes, yeah. And so they started asking her questions and they realized she had no speech problem. She was in character for like 2.5 hours every day.
Sorry to jump
That
in.
is
We are
amazing.
just about to come back.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, no, it was hilarious.
See? Asking questions.
Oh my God. It was so
It's
funny.
So funny.
You are listening to Focus on Success. To reach Fazia Costi or her guest on the live show, please call 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. You may also send an email to Fazia at executivefunctioncoachaz.com. Now, back to Focus on Success.
Welcome back. Today we are talking with Treisha Wan. She is a speech language pathologist and owner of Illuminate Family Workshop. Welcome back, Treisha.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the second part of our conversation here. You've given us some wonderful information, and I'm really fascinated with what you do. Let's carry on a little bit from from before the break. We were talking about reading comprehension and vocabulary development. I'd like to kind of carry on that theme a little bit and talk about, what are some ways that we could support story grammar, and what is story grammar for our listeners who don't know?
Yeah. So story grammar is going to be the structure of how the story is written. So it's going to include components and elements that are always going to be in stories, or in a narrative, characters and setting, and the actions and events, problem, solution throughout the story. And so we were talking a little bit before the break about having those structures in a visual representation of them, so that a student is able to mindfully read and pay attention to the different parts of the story that they are listening to, reading, watching, and interacting with. And
Thank you.
Something that occurs to me too with this reading comprehension piece, I think when we think about it through this we do think about it through this academic lens. And it's a very formal sit down, write it out in this worksheet kind of way. Here are these questions. And, while that's how we test kids, it doesn't have to be the way that we interact with it. It can be an immersive experience that really engages the student. So I think that engagement piece is going to be the most important part to get them excited about what they're doing. I was talking to a family the other week about how they were going to this, they were reading a book on Amelia Earhart, and they went and did like a little field trip to an hangar airport thing, or there was like a cafe outside of it and you can go have lunch there. And so, she had the little helmet thing that pilots wear, and so it was like that immersive experience. And it doesn't have to be that far extreme, but when you're talking about the structure words and the story grammar and the elements there, it doesn't have to always be in worksheet form, and it doesn't always have to be in this like test format. It can look like a book club. It can look like Paperbacks and Pizza Club, where your kiddo is reading a story, gathered with friends, and they are it's a special time that everyone gets together and they read their book, and then afterwards they have pizza and they talk about, maybe they're reading the same book or different books.
Right.
And they're all talking about like, well, who are the characters in your book? And how are they like you, and how are they not like you? How are you guys same and similar and different? And how can you relate to the story? And is the setting somewhere in in this like make believe land. Would you want to live there? And kind of making it, getting them involved in the reading to promote that reading comprehension piece. So it doesn't always have to be in that kind of formal way.
No, I love it. And I love how you speak with such passion, no matter what you're saying. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, that's how every student should be. Every student should just be so passionate about everything they're reading, everything they're interacting with, because learning should be fun. It should be a joy. And I think that as teachers, we need to make sure that we find creative ways to do the to teach the fundamentals. It should be fun. It just really should be fun. In my opinion, all learning should be fun.
Absolutely. I think that we sometimes get a little carried away with the sticker charts and rewards and that extrinsic motivation, when in reality, the true reward is intrinsic. It's the curiosity that we get to have about what we're reading, what we're learning, or if we're not interested in it, it's the fact that we're building that persistence muscle in doing things that we don't want to do, which will inevitably be throughout our life.
Well, exactly. And sometimes those things we don't want to do get us to a place where we really want to be.
Truly.
And that's, there's something to be said for that, there really is. How does speech therapy support writing? Let's talk a little bit about that.
So writing can be a really laborious task for some of my students. It can either be the handwriting piece, the fine motor skills, and it can also be the sentence structure that they are struggling with. So sometimes students will, if they're not recognizing it in their reading, it's really difficult for them for that to transpose into their writing skills. So that's when you're looking at a piece of journal writing that doesn't look like it's up to grade level. So that may look like some run-on sentences and some just really simple vocabulary words that when you're talking to them, they have a lot more of a colorful language. And you're like, oh, you're describing this as good. And that was fun, like just very basic vocabulary. And they're not really infusing their own vocabulary into the writing, because they're just like, okay, let's just write this simple structure in here that, and their grade level and what they're capable of is a lot higher than that. So sometimes there's a mismatch there. And that's kind of where speech therapy will come in. That is where speech therapy comes in, and explicitly teaches different sentence structures and conjunctions to include in their writing, so that it makes it more descriptive and grade level and what is expected of them at that grade, and really helps them as they are maturing too, to express themselves in a way that goes beyond the simple sentences and simple vocabulary that are basic that they are using. So it can look like the sentence structure. Our kiddos that really struggle with spelling may just stick with the basic vocabulary too, because it's easier to spell, happy than it is to spell, exuberant or something like that. So they're going to use the words that they know how to spell. They're easier to, you don't have to think too hard about it, because you're balancing so many different skills all at once. You're balancing, the handwriting piece of it, the word structure piece of it, the spelling part of it, while also planning out what you're writing. So if the task is to write what you thought about this story or about your vacation, where are you starting on that page? Are you starting right in the middle? And then we can kind of loop back into story grammar, which we talked about before. Are they writing it in a cohesive way that makes sense to their readers and makes sense to them?
Right. And if they're struggling with their organizing their thoughts, that's an executive function portion. So now you have to correct that as well and improve that skill. And so you've got a lot of working parts that have to go together nicely. Okay.
So I think that it's not only, we're like, oh, they just need to sit down and write. It's a lot more than that. That from the executive functioning part.
Absolutely. There's a lot of things that go together that make that one simple task look simple.
Absolutely. And when one piece is not involves that needs more support than other skills, you're going to need someone on your team, like an executive function coach, like a speech therapist that has the understanding of the complexity so that they can support each individual part. And so that student can have the scaffolding that they need.
Well, just like you work on executive function when you're working with your clients, because they come to you for the speech aspect of, therapy.
Mhm.
I sometimes find myself, doing something similar. They come to me with executive function challenges, but they're maybe struggling with comprehension. So we kind of have to tie the two together. So I think it's really important for parents to know that there's more than one thing going on, and that they need to really pay attention and determine what's more important. Do you want to go the speech pathologist route, or do you want to go the executive function route? Either way, find somebody that's really good at what they do, so that they can, if they can't handle the job, they can at least refer you to the right person.
Absolutely. So
Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about speech therapy and how it supports self-regulation and social emotional skills.
Okay. So that's really interesting. That's a perfect segue, because we're talking about how we kind of like, not double dip, but like it's so expansive and there's so much overlap between
there is an overlap.
professionals,
Yes.
between teachers, between therapists, between, I used to think when I was starting my career, like I just got to stay in my lane and only work on the things that, like definitely pay attention to your scope and what you're, trained on, educated on, and, don't go like veering off into, where you're not supposed to be and speaking with authority in that place. But, you have to pay attention to, if you have this holistic lens, on all the components. So, when I'm talking about sensory regulation, self-regulation, energy regulation, I used to think like, well, that's, I shouldn't really touch that. It's the OT's part. But a student needs to be engaged and regulated in order to access all the higher cognitive functions. So there's a resource by Jessie Ginsburg. She's a speech language pathologist. If you just Google that, and I'll give you the link to put in the show notes. She created this visual of the language staircase. And it was a really helpful illustration for me, because so on the staircase, the first step is engagement and regulation. And the next step is going to be your basic language. And then the next step is going to be your higher cognitive and higher language, advanced language skills. And then along that is going to be a banister that says intrinsic motivation. And so, when your student is highly dysregulated, maybe they didn't eat anything that day, or, maybe something's really bothering them from school or from home, or, they're really fixated on this thing that just happened. And then you're trying to jump into story grammar, no one's gonna have a fun time. And, we don't want to put up bad taste in a kid's mouth about things that they have to do. So let's, go down a couple steps here and talk about engagement and regulation, which really ties into the relationship that we have to have with the student first. So I believe that when a student has the language for energy regulation and for their own self-regulation, they're able to be a self-advocate for what they need at that moment. And let what, I'm like feeling really wiggly right now. Or, maybe you can reflect back to them. You're like, I see you wiggling in your seat a lot right now. Do you want to let's, maybe we're not doing seat work, and maybe we're going to go do something else where we'll get to move our body. Maybe we're involving an obstacle course in our session that, it doesn't have to be that we take these movement breaks. We can incorporate the movement into therapy.
Absolutely. I love that. I absolutely love that. I love meeting students where they're at, as opposed to forcing them to meet us where we're at, because they're there to learn, and you have to model that behavior. So if they can't sit still, you're right. You have to work with what you have and meet them where they're at. I am
someone who cannot keep still. So I'm a wiggler, and movement, I definitely incorporate that. And when you're talking about making sessions fun, I need it to be fun in order for me to do my job. So, there is always this thing in schools where you gotta, maybe schools are they're evolving now, but it used to be, it's very still for the most
Right.
part, sit in your seat, and your feet have to be on the floor and your hands are like in this way. But if a student's standing, it really doesn't bother me. So
No, I let my students stand up
you
while they
do.
work. I let them walk around. I remember one of the first students I had, the parents were like I was in their home and the parent kept trying to sit them down. And I pulled the parents aside and I said, if you ask me to come into your home and work with your son, you have to let me do the work. And it does, and I need him to get up and walk around, and eventually he will stop. And sure enough, he did. He stopped. And by the time we were done working, he was a totally different kid. But the parents kept forcing him to sit, and that caused a lot of frustration for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he was frustrated, he couldn't focus on what he needed to focus on. So I definitely see the importance of just meeting kids where they're at. I love that.
Truly. And it really helps them become that advocate for themselves in the future too. It just like really is a jumping point for them. So they can ask for what they need.
Absolutely.
Know what they need.
Absolutely. Right now I can't sit down, but if you can work with me while I move around, great. If not, let's reschedule. And I think that's important to know about yourself. It's a very important thing. Let's talk a little bit about sensory regulation. Why is it important to address that?
So I think about sensory regulation and energy regulation. There's another resource that I told you I love nerding out on different resources and hearing what people are up to.
I love it too.
There's
it's awesome.
A resource by Dr. Jacqueline Fede and Dr. Amy Laurent, and they have a website called Autism Level Up. And so it's for, they designed it specifically for kiddos on the spectrum, but I believe it can be used for everyone. Along with the resource that I mentioned before from Jessie Ginsburg, she specifically works with, or she does a lot of her work with autistic kiddos, but it's a great resource for anybody. And it's a great resource for everybody. So it's an energy meter, and it really stems from this conversation about how, okay, so there's a couple different resources out there right now that talk about the feelings of where you need to be at to be in your optimal zone for learning. But being complex humans, we often feel all the emotions all at once, right? Like you can hold multiple emotions in your body. And so having that conversation with kids on like, you can feel excited and also worried about the test coming up at the same time. It doesn't just like you need to pick one and that's where you are. And so the energy meter has 6 descriptive words that are kind of neutral to feelings. So and it goes off of some research from developmental learning theory, where there's like biobehaviors. So the bottom one's like asleep, and the top one is oh gosh, I'm forgetting it, but it's like amped up. And then, there's in the middle, you're calm and focused, and you don't need to be calm and focused everywhere. Like it's a little weird if you're calm and focused on the playground when you can be amped up and frenzied on the playground. So like, does your energy match the energy needed for the activity? And so it kind of does, it has like you put a little arrow on one side that has the energy for the activity, and you put an arrow on the other side for where you're at. And so their resources talk about how you can power up and power down so that your energy is a match for the resource. Also going into self-advocacy, and also going into awareness of what does it feel like when I'm amped up and frenzied in my body, and does it match what, how does that look like to other people? So like, for example, Jacqueline Fede does an interview, and she talks about how when she is in like the stressed out arousal state, like she just smiles. So like, maybe to other people, like she looks like she's happy, but she's actually not, like she's freaking out on the inside or something. So like, will other people know how to interpret what you're projecting out in that way? And like, how do we learn about each other? So like that sensory regulation, going back to that piece, knowing where you're at so that you can meet a kiddo where they are, so that you can work on the skills that they need in order to be successful or to achieve the goals that they have in place. I love it. But
yeah, that's awesome. I'm actually going to look that up. That sounds very interesting. Let's shift a little bit more. And let's talk about some tools and strategies that you use to support sensory regulation with students.
Mm-hmm. So talking about those like powering up and powering down pieces, we talk about the vocabulary around knowing who your student is and what it looks like for them to be in a regulated state. So does that look like a student, most of the time when we're looking at a classroom, the kiddo who's wiggly is going to look wiggly, but there are some students that are more of like the low arousal daydreamer. They don't really make too many waves because they're sitting in their chair, but they are not paying attention to what's going on in the classroom, but they are not making any issues for anybody. So they kind of fly under the radar. So so for that student, you're going to want to amp them up a little bit more. And what are some things things that they can use to get amped up about what they are learning about for that amount of time. And then for our kiddos who are super amped up, how do you power down? How do you, what does it look like for them to get down to get into that calm and focus state? And just working with their body and their needs. So it really is about taking inventory about the different profile that they have and trying out different things. Because those things might change as this kiddo is growing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it might look different in first grade and it might look different in fifth grade. It's kind of supposed to almost. Yeah.
Well, yes, I think it has to. It has to. I mean,
Yeah.
I would be worried if they weren't evolving and changing and growing. I would be very worried. So yes, I love it. Okay, we've got about 4 or 3 minutes. I just want to talk a little bit about how do you motivate students without, tangible rewards?
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about why this is important.
So I got rid of my treasure box, prize box thing a long time ago because now kids were coming to me and they were just asking for stickers. And I'm not just the sticker lady.
Where's my reward for being here?
Exactly. Your reward is that you get to hang out with me. So and especially if we're so focused on the stickers, I like to shift gears into making sure that the student knows why we're seeing each other. Why am I in your life? What is the purpose for us working together? And, is there a point in which, if we're working on articulation skills, where you graduate from speech? Sometimes kids didn't know that there could be a point where they didn't have to come to speech therapy, or right. For a student, like for them to know what their goals are, how they are going about achieving them, and what it looks like when those goals are achieved. How does that feel in their body? What are they working towards? And then marking the progress with them. And it doesn't have to be like in secret that, like, oh, I want to, it happens in a fun way. So right. It really gets their buy-in and helps them make progress.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my last question to you is, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
So my 20-year-old self, it would be helpful if she knew that the visions and dreams that she's got in her heart that other people may not understand are there for a reason. And that, the person that has this creative perspective on things, those are there because they're creative things that need to be created in this world. And, to share those.
I love it. Thank you. So once again, if you could give your contact information. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
Yeah, they can visit my website at illuminateFamilyWorkshop.com.
Wonderful. And they can email you or call you through there as well. Okay.
Yeah, I've got my email up there. There's a couple links to my YouTube channel and Instagram. So yeah.
And do you see patients only in person, or do you see people via Zoom as well?
I see mainly patients or clients in Phoenix, but I'll do some consults via Zoom.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. If you're looking to get in touch with me, you can go to my website, executivefunctioncoachaz.com. If you'd like to call me, my number is 480-648-1122. And make sure you go to our website and subscribe to our magazine. Starting January, we will be going monthly. So make sure you get your copy. And without you, this would not be possible. So I just want to give a quick shout out to everybody. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Okay, perfect. Great job today. All clear.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome. All right, you both have a great rest of your day.
You
Thanks so
too.
much.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
That was so fun.
Yeah,
That flew by. I enjoyed that.
I'm glad. Give me 1 second. I'm going to
Yeah.
stop the recording.